intended for Kalecki Latu. And the Buffs will storm the field with a win under interim head coach Mike Sanford.
What a job by Mike Sanford. He deserves this celebration. The whiteout is going to cover Folsom Field. The goal line post, the end zone posts are turned down. They're having a party here in Folsom.
How about them Buffs, huh? You're watching right on Q Buff Spot.
Running the option on first down. Hagan has it. He has room. He's got one man to beat. Now he pitches to Flanagan, and he may take it all the way. Flanagan's in for the touchdown. He needs 28 yards to get into 2,000. Here is the give to Salam. Salam to the outside. He's down to the 50. He's got 2,000. He's on his way. 20, 15, 10. Let's it go. He's got three people down there. The ball's up in the air. Caught. Greenberg, play action, walks one, got his man, it's Jeremy Brown. Nobody's going to catch him. Third down and 7. Blitz coming. Speed and Trevor Lawrence loose. Scooped up by Colorado, and a big man running all the way.
That is right. You are watching right on Q Buff Spot. I am your host, Tyson Quiller. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this content with anyone you think might find it interesting. Send me your feedback at RightOnQCS on Twitter, rightonqcs@gmail.com. We need to hold this administration to the fire. Make sure they are taking this coaching search seriously. I'll do my part here. You do your part as well. We need to make sure that they're taking it very, very seriously. I'm going to talk about a couple of big picture things throughout this episode that they better be doing behind the scenes, monitoring and working towards. But in other news, take a deep breath. That, my friends, is the taste of victory. How about them Buffs? First time in 329 days, we got the dub. That is right. Let's roll right into it. The Buffs got the win in overtime, 20-13 over Cal on Saturday. And let us start here. The fans were spectacular. I mean, let's just take a moment and recognize y'all. You showed up in force, and you are due a lot of credit for that victory on Saturday. I mean, 50,471 fans in the stands on Family Day. The whiteout was visually stunning, and throughout this game, the volume was just straight up deafening. Rick, George, and Phil DiStefano. This is a fan base that deserves a winner. Don't screw up this coaching search. Now let's hear what JT Shrout had to say about you guys, the fans.
You know, I'm so thankful for this amazing fan base we have. They want to win so badly, and I'm so glad we were able to provide that for them today. They've been showing up ever since I showed up in Boulder. They're selling out home field games, and they're here rooting us on. And I can't thank our crowd and our fans more enough. So go Buffs, and thank you, Buff Nation.
That is absolutely right, JT Shrout. Good for you for recognizing that. I hope that that's a culture that's growing within this program. But let's get to the game itself. So the first and most obvious takeaway, wow, that was a completely different defense than we've seen basically all year long. Let me put this into perspective for us. Cal running back Jaden Ott was the second leading rusher in the Pac-12, a top 20 running back in the country yardage-wise coming into the game, averaging about 120 yards per game this season. Saturday, Cal had just 35 yards rushing the entire game. Damn it, that is getting the job done. How about that Buffs defense? Good for you, boys. The new defensive coordinator, Gerald Chapman, made some scheme changes, and they really paid off in this game. Okay, a couple of new nickel looks. They moved the linebacker Robert Barnes to the nickel position. Those nickel packages clearly confused the quarterback. You also had kind of some high-low sets on the outside for the wide receiver that really forced Plummer, the Cal quarterback, to kind of take an extra beat in diagnosing as opposed to just a man coverage where you're going, okay, my guy's got him beat or not, and that paid off. Now, I have bagged on the D-line several times this year, and rightfully so. but they stepped up in a huge way in this one. So let me take this opportunity to give a couple of guys their due props. Big Terrence Lang and Naeem Rodman completely owned the Cal offensive line, start to finish, 7 combined tackles, and just massive plays in big moments to end Cal drives. I mean, as a unit, I really can't express how impressive this entire defense was in the first half. You know what? Add Jalen Sammy to that as well. He played phenomenally well too. These are strong, talented guys. This is why I've been so frustrated with their performance to this point. So now we know what you can do. Keep it going. As for the offense, though, I mean, they started the game off the same way they have all season long. 3 straight 3-and-outs. The first 4 drives went punt, 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 and then Owen McCowan threw an interception. I mean, that's just flat unacceptable. Also, there's just kind of a continuing situation with Daniel Arias and these dropped passes. Both of them early in the game on 3rd downs, ended drives. I mean, just the worst possible time. Listen, I told you last week McCowan had a long way to go, and of course that is true. He is just a true freshman. But only 4.9 yards per pass, no touchdowns, and an interception. I mean, we could easily get that from Trout or Lewis as well. To be quite honest, I think the offensive coaches are maybe just being a little too smart by half, right? Trying to focus too much on having a balanced offense. You had 34 passes and 35 runs in the game. I mean, typically that's something you're trying to achieve, but with how limited we are at quarterback, and when the running backs are going for 3.5 yards per carry, I would lean into that more. I mean, Deion Smith was likely on his way to 80, maybe even 90 yards in the game before he got injured. And speaking of which, I know that was scary when it happened, but it sounds like he's up and walking around, doing much better now, which is fantastic news. Now, the QB, McCowan, did take a lot of punishment early in the game, so at the end of the 3rd quarter, in comes JT Shrout to spell him. Now, let's be clear. He was not the spark that the Buffs received, okay? That came from this brilliant play call executed perfectly as Jordan Tyson completes a 37-yard pass to the dude, Montana Lemonious-Craig, clear down to the Cal 5-yard line. What a freaking catch, by the way. Lemonious-Craig had a fantastic game. I mean, maybe he deserves the starter reps over Daniel Arias, to be quite frank. But after Cal tied the game up 10-10, Shrout did truly lead a heck of a drive. 14 plays, 69 yards, all the way down to the Cal 3-yard line with a little more than 4 minutes remaining in the game. Then Anthony Hankerson run for no gain, Anthony Hankerson run for a 3-yard loss, and Shrout throws an incomplete pass. None of those plays were Hankerson or Shrout's fault, as our offensive line just completely folded like a wet paper bag at the goal line. That was just a pitiful effort by the big men up front, and they need to be pointed out for that. So sure enough, Cole Becker comes on, kicks through the field goal, and the Buffs were up 13-10 with 4.5 minutes left. And I got to be honest with you, at that point in time, I'm thinking you needed to get a touchdown, because 4.5 minutes left, they had a couple timeouts. You're thinking they might be able to matriculate the ball down the field. Touchdown would win it. Sure enough, here comes that Cal Bears offense rolling. A pass for 6 yards, pass for 15, pass for 10, pass for 11. I mean, in 5 plays, they were already on the edge of field goal range. I'm screaming at this point, call a timeout! Call a timeout! We had 3 timeouts, and I really think Mike Sanford blew this situation. Your first-time defensive coordinator, who, quite frankly, to that point, had pitched an incredible game. He had clearly lost the handle on the game. That happens sometimes. I don't know if it was that Cal had figured something out, or that the players were tiring out, or even maybe Chapman just needed a moment to regroup his squad. But he absolutely, to that point, had earned one of those timeouts, and Sanford should have called it right then. But he didn't, and 3 plays later, Cal was at our 10-yard line. Now, at this point, you're thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to get a touchdown and that loses the game? But again, this defense stood tall at the most important moment with just 2 seconds left. Josh Chandler-Semedo flies into the backfield, slams Cal's quarterback to the ground for a sack that backed them up 9 yards. They punched in the field goal, and on to overtime we go. Now let me just say this. I've bagged a little on the offense to this point. The play calling of the 3-play set in overtime by this offensive crew was pure brilliance. 3 plays, 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 3 You had a Hankerson run, a short swing pass to Hankerson that kind of sucked in the defense, and then sure enough, Shrout with a touch pass to the corner of the end zone. And again, how about that catch by Montana Lemonious-Craig? Just incredible. And the sideline erupted. Still, Cal takes over for their chance. And I mean, this defense just played great in coverage. This breakup right here by Trevor Woods, when it looked like a sure touchdown, I mean, this dude just refused to quit. That was the play of the game, if not Montana Lemonious-Craig's catch. How much fun was it to see the Buffs competitive again? I mean, the guys from down on the field were saying, like, in the fourth quarter, they're like, well, typically we're used to looking up the stands, and they're basically empty by this point, right? But it was a packed, raucous crowd. I mean, this is why we care. Because it is so much fun and fulfilling when we win. Now let's get back to reality, okay? I mean, this is by far the worst team we've played all year, and we needed overtime to beat them at home. So you have 3 coaches now who are in new positions. Let's take a look at their report cards and see how they fared in their first game. Let's start with the defensive coordinator, Gerald Chapman, who was elevated from being the defensive line coach. Yeah, I talked about it earlier. The effort and performance that this unit put forth in the running game was absolutely sensational. 35 yards on 22 carries, that's just 1.6 yards per carry. They forced 2 long missed field goals in the first half and had a big 4th down stop. Very impressive. The pass defense was, really kind of earning an A grade through the first half as well, having given up just 80 yards through the air to that point. On the game, though, they ended up giving up 262 yards on 52 passes. In the second half, it really turned into kind of a bend but don't break effort. The first drive out of halftime and the last drive of regulation are really kind of where Cal racked up the most yardage. Ultimately, you gave up 19 first downs in the game, but they only gave up 1 touchdown. 13 points in total in the game. Like I said, real bend but don't break effort. This group certainly won the game for us, and for that, I think Gerald Chapman earns a B+ grade. The defense forced 2 turnovers, 22 different players collected a tackle in this game. Just a complete team effort. These guys clearly buy in to what Chapman is selling. And I think, quite frankly, this dude really made a statement that maybe he deserves consideration to keep this defensive coordinator title permanently. Next, your new offensive coordinator, Clay Patterson. This offense came out with the same whimper as it has all season. This win is definitely credited to the defense, not the offense. Okay, this is basically the same offensive performance we got at Air Force. 4 times this year, the Buffs have scored more in the first half than they did this past Saturday. Owen McCown still making freshman mistakes, and I would contend the offensive line actually played worse than they have all season in this game. Plus, something we actually haven't had many issues with to this point, we had 3 turnovers in the game. That is a bit concerning for me. But I do credit Patterson with having the creativity to try that trick play wide receiver pass in the second half. That, like I said, really sparked this unit. And also, I thought the series of play calls in overtime, again, were very brilliant. The running game was steady. The offense kind of got things clicking late in the second half. And, of course, we discovered an amazing diamond in the rough in Montana Lemonious-Craig. All told, they got it done in overtime, but I can't give Patterson anything better than a D+ for this performance. He, unlike Chapman, is, I think, a really clear placeholder. When the next head coach is hired, I think we really need Mike Sanford to return to the offensive coordinator position. And speaking of Mike Sanford, our interim head coach, let's just be clear about this. He brought another level of energy and buy-in from the players in this one. There's just no question about it. It was a totally different atmosphere, environment, and feeling. That is one major difference from the team under Darrell's leadership. And you got the win, and this defense played better than they have all year, but the issues with this offense were still present. We had 3 points at halftime against a defense that gives up 22 points per game. We started the game off with 3 3-and-outs and a pick. That needs to be addressed. And like I said before, the way he just watched as Cal marched down the field on that final drive of regulation with 3 timeouts in his pocket and didn't use one until they were already inside of our red zone, that I think is just a complete failure in coaching. I give him a C on the game. Now, there is promise, and Sanford is being vetted to potentially take over as the full-time head coach, but he should not be considered the default next head coach. I repeat, should not. Big picture now, okay? Keep in mind, early signing day for recruits is December 21st this year. The process better be in motion for this head coach and progressing behind the scenes. I know Rick George said that they may take to the end of the season to announce their new head coach. And listen, I agree. You shouldn't hurry things. But if you think you've got your guy, you need to let him get to work. With all that being said, though, that was a fun Buffs win on Saturday. So awesome. And these next two games become very critical. Okay, but let's wrap up our recap with our players of the game. On offense, Montana Lemonious-Craig, no question about it. 8 catches, 119 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, just crazy circus catches. And, of course, the game winner. I mean, this dude is an absolute stud. And on the defense, Trevor Woods. 8 tackles in the game. He had that huge stuff on the 4th down stop in the first half. He just kind of came up from the secondary, slammed the quarterback sneak in the gap. That was impressive. He had 2 big pass breakups in this game as well, including that one in overtime where everyone just kind of assumed it was a touchdown. Monster performance by both of these guys, and they're both just sophomores. The future is bright. Now, I mentioned how critical these next 2 games are. Let's take a look at the Oregon State Beavers. Now, this is a program that's really on the rise. But remember now, the Buffs did beat the Beavers last year 37-34 in overtime at home. The Beavers' offense is ranked just 60th in the nation, 418 yards per game. The Buffs' defense should have a chance to hold them down at least for a while in this one. But very clearly, stopping the run will need to be the emphasis. Oregon State has the 40th best rushing offense in the country, and it's really kind of a running back by committee situation with Griffin, Martinez, and Fenwick, all at right around 300 yards rushing on the season. If the Buffs defense can stifle the run like they did this past weekend, especially with the uncertainty of the quarterback situation at Oregon State between Chance Nolan and the third-year freshman Ben Gulbranson, I think you give us a chance. This dude on your screen right now is Chance Nolan. He is Oregon State's leading passer this year and was their starting quarterback last year. Well, he left the Utah game with a neck strain 3 weeks ago and hasn't played since. Your likely starter for this game is going to be this dude, Ben Gulbranson. Now, he goes about 200 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception per game. He is young and inexperienced. If the defense can get in, speed him up, give him some confusing looks in the secondary, I think we can force some turnovers here. Now, how should the offense prepare? Well, in 5 of their 7 games this year, a running back has gone for over 100 yards on this Oregon State defense. They are extremely soft and inexperienced up front. Even Montana State's running back went for 135 yards on this front. Their defensive line has accounted for just 2.5 sacks on the year. I mean, it's clearly their weakness because this secondary is actually pretty stingy. They have a number of creative schemes that they deploy as well, and that's allowed them to come up with 8 interceptions on the year. So I think the game plan should be to establish a heavy run presence early. That's going to fall on the shoulders of the freshman duo of Anthony Hankerson and Charlie Offerdell because Deion Smith is likely a scratch. But that will hopefully get Oregon State to switch out of their creative zones and into more man coverage sets to provide better run support. After that occurs, then you give Montana Lemonious-Craig and Jordan Tyson some chances to try and win their matchups one-on-one on the outside. So, Oregon State is 5-2 on the year, and they're receiving votes for the top 25. They have wins over Boise State, Fresno State, and Washington State this season. They did only win by just 1 point at Stanford, though, and Stanford is not very good this year. But they also only lost by 3 at home to USC before getting the doors blown off of them completely by Utah squad's 42-16. Oregon State is currently favored by 24 points. Wow. If the Buffs are going to win this one, it's going to need to probably be another low-scoring game, okay? Maximum something like 24-21, maybe 21-17, something like that. Now, a quick big picture note, again, before we get out of here, we need to keep looking at the transfer portal with vigilance and act when we can. This dude, Jack Tuttle, is the backup quarterback at Indiana. He has announced he will be entering the portal. His head coach, Tom Allen, has confirmed that. Now, he hasn't done a whole lot at the college level, but in his 3 starts over the last 2 seasons, he passed for 188 yards against number 10 Michigan State last year, 130 yards at number 16 Wisconsin in 2020, and 201 yards against Ole Miss in their bowl game that year. He also was a 4-star recruit back in 2018 out of California. Could he come in as a grad transfer and maybe lead us to 6 wins or so next year while Shrout, Lewis, and McCowan get more experience, develop more, and then one of them takes over the following season as a junior? I don't think that's the worst idea. And here are a couple more QBs who have already announced they will be entering the transfer portal. Boise State quarterback Hank Bachmeier. Bachmeier, too, is a grad transfer. You could have a same situation. Then you got Wisconsin quarterback Deacon Hill, San Diego State quarterback Will Haskell, and Arizona quarterback Jordan McLeod, all out there in the open going into the transfer portal. 4 of those 5 guys I just told you about are West Coast guys. I'm just saying this needs to be a focus of the program, okay? And Mike Sanford, whether he comes back next year as head coach or returns to being offensive coordinator, he needs to be on top of this. He needs to be taking action and pursuing this in a very deliberate and intentional way, all right? But with all of that being said, a Buffs victory, man. Savor the flavor. We relish in it. It doesn't happen very often anymore around here. So hopefully we are moving things in the right direction here. And I quite frankly think we do have a decent chance in our next 2 games, okay? At Oregon State, then Arizona State at home. I think we got a shot. The last 4 is a brutal stretch, but the next 2, I think we got a shot, all right? But that'll do it for today's episode. Tell me where I got it right. Tell me where I got it wrong. A victory for Buff Nation. I love it. As always, you've been watching Right on Cue Buff Spot. I am your host, Tyson Quiller. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and send me your feedback at RightOnQCS on Twitter, RightOnQCS@gmail.com. Until next time, go Buffs.
Running the option on first down. Hagan has it. He has room. He's got 1 man to beat. Now he pitches to Flanagan, and he may take it all the way. Flanagan's in for the touchdown. He needs 28 yards to get into 2,000. Here is the give to Salam. Salam to the outside. He's down to the 50. He's got 2,000. He's on his way. 20, 15, 10. Lets it go. He's got 3 people down there. The ball's up in the air. Greenberg, play action, walks one.